Before we begin, an important note. All images shown in this video are for illustrative purposes only, to protect the real identity of the couple in this story. What you're about to hear is based on true events, a meeting that seemed impossible, unlikely, and yet absolutely predestined. On a day when everything seemed to be falling apart, two shattered souls collided in a quiet space filled with pages and poetry. A bookstore. This is the story of Mark and Christine. He had just received a life-changing diagnosis and was between two exhausting medical tests. She had just been fired and entered the bookstore in tears, hoping to escape the weight of the world. There was nothing in that moment that suggested destiny would smile on them. But that's exactly how soulmates meet, when the world seems to crumble. Get ready to experience a story that proves true love doesn't knock. It simply enters. Even on the days when everything seems lost, Christine wasn't the type to cry in public. On the contrary, she was always strong, determined, and composed. But that day, after a cold and impersonal meeting that ended with, "Unfortunately, we're eliminating your position," she couldn't hold it in. She walked aimlessly, as if her body knew where to go when her mind had gone numb. And that's how she found herself in that downtown bookstore. Eyes still red, trying to hold back tears, looking for some kind of comfort between covers and pages. She sat in the back of the store, near the forgotten poetry section. There, surrounded by verses of ancient love, she finally let the tears fall silently. And that was the exact moment Mark walked in. Not by coincidence, but by fate. Mark was fighting a very different battle. Just days earlier, he had received a devastating diagnosis. A rare, degenerative illness that would force him to put his entire life on pause. He was between two medical appointments and needed a break, something to take his mind off the looming countdown ticking inside him. He entered the bookstore not for comfort, but for distraction, anything to silence the fear. He walked slowly down the aisles until, turning a quiet corner, he heard a soft sob. That sound, a quiet cry, made him stop. Not out of curiosity, but out of empathy. He knew what pain sounded like. And in that moment, two strangers were about to change each other's lives forever. Mark hesitated. He didn't want to intrude on someone's private moment, but something inside him insisted. "Say something." He approached slowly, stopping a respectful distance away, and softly asked, "Are you okay?" Christine looked up, clearly surprised and a little embarrassed to be seen crying. But there was something in his eyes. A familiar sadness. A reflection. She shook her head gently. No, she wasn't okay. And instead of offering advice or trying to fix it, Mark simply sat across the shelf and said, "I'm not okay either." The silence that followed was powerful. For the first time in a long time, both felt like they weren't alone. The world around them faded, and in that moment, between old books and shy glances, a quiet connection was born. They spent hours in that bookstore, talking very little but sharing everything. Words weren't necessary, just being there was enough. Mark gently told her about his diagnosis. Christine, still shaken by her own situation, was deeply moved by his strength, and strangely by his ability to still smile. She shared how she'd lost her job and her sense of direction. And Mark listened fully. No judgment, no solutions, just presence. When the store announced closing time, they exchanged a look that said, "This can't end here." So they walked. The night wrapped around them like a protective blanket, and the conversation grew deeper. The kind of conversation that only happens between souls that have known each other for lifetimes. The next morning, Christine woke up feeling different. For the first time in weeks, there was a lightness in her chest. Not because her problems were gone, but because something had begun. Something she couldn't explain. Mark woke up with a strange certainty. That woman hadn't appeared in his life by accident. In the following days, they met often. Sometimes to talk, sometimes just to walk. Slowly, their pain began to transform into something else. Into hope. Mark started facing his treatments with more courage. Christine began reevaluating her path, her dreams. In their own ways, they were both beginning again. But like any real love story, fate wasn't done yet. Twist was coming. A few months later, Mark had a severe relapse. He was rushed to the hospital and, for days, his condition was critical. When Christine heard the news, she ran there. But Mark's family, who barely knew her, didn't allow her in. She waited in the lobby for days, holding back her despair like someone clinging to a crumbling wall. Then, one of the nurses, moved by her determination, handed her an envelope. Inside was a letter from Mark. It read, "If you're reading this, it might mean I can't see you again. But know this, meeting you was the miracle of my life. I didn't fight for a cure. I fought for more time with you." Christine broke down in tears. But inside those tears, there was something new, faith. Against all odds, Mark woke up. Days later, still weak, he asked for Christine. When she entered the room, his eyes filled with tears. Life had given him back what he feared most to lose. His recovery was slow, but filled with love. Christine stood by him every step of the way. Before long, there was no doubt. What they had was real. It wasn't a temporary romance, nor a coincidence. It was something ancient, a deep soul-to-soul bond. Mark began calling Christine my walking miracle. And she would say, "If I lost that job that day, it was only because the universe needed to lead me to you." A painful beginning, yes, but one that opened the door to true, eternal love. Today, Mark and Christine live together, grateful for every breath, every sunrise. And every time they pass that little bookstore, they pause. Not to relive the pain, but to honor the sacred moment when everything began. Because sometimes, pain opens portals that only true love can cross. This story reminds us that soulmates don't meet in perfect moments. They recognize each other in chaos, in loss, in raw vulnerability. And if this story touched your heart, maybe it's time to look at your own journey. Because yes, you too might have a soulmate story waiting to be uncovered. Our exclusive tool reveals the spiritual patterns and energies of your life to help you identify the deeper meaning behind your connections, and maybe even discover who your soulmate truly is. Click the link in the description to begin your soulmate story today. And if you love real stories of deep connection and spiritual awakening, make sure to subscribe to the channel now. Turn on the notification bell because the next soulmate story could be yours.